Hello and welcome to the inaugural Hay House World Summit. We're very excited to have you all participating in this special event. This is your host, Jessica Ortner from thetapping.solution.com. By the time we finish this interview, you will have a new tool that you can use right away to start seeing a difference in your emotional and physical health. EFT, also known as tapping, is a simple yet profound technique which involves tapping on the meridian points of our bodies while saying certain statements. It is providing uniquely powerful results. And today you'll learn how to experience those results for yourself. To lead the way, we are speaking to Nick Ortner from thetapping.solution.com. Nick is the creator and producer of the documentary film about tapping, The Tapping Solution. He is the author of the new book, also entitled The Tapping Solution. He is the producer of the yearly online event, the Tapping World Summit, which has attracted 500,000 participants from around the world. Nick is a tapping expert who speaks to different audiences all around the world, and I'm happy that he is with us today. This is a special privilege for me because he is, in fact, my brother. Welcome, Nick.
Thanks, Jess, for having me on.
Well, this is going to be a fun conversation. I know it's a topic we're both passionate about. And let's just start with the very basics. What is EFT tapping?
That's a great place to start and great question. And I'm so delighted to be on this Hay House World Summit. What an amazing, amazing event. Well, EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique, or tapping, and we call it tapping because we are literally tapping on these endpoints of meridians on our body while saying certain statements. I like to describe it as a combination of ancient Chinese acupressure, that's the tapping component, or acupuncture, fortunately without the needles, for those that don't like the needles, and modern psychology, because we are tapping on these endpoints of meridians while saying certain statements, while focusing on what's stressing us out, what's bothering us, what's going on in our lives that we want to change.
Okay, so that's how you do it. I mean, that's what we're doing. We're tapping on these points. But how does tapping on these points help us? What's actually going on in the body and in our brain?
Yeah, well, that's the question we've all been wondering for so long, right? Because we know it works, and that's one of the exciting things about tapping that we'll get to in this call, that you can have an experience and just see for yourself that it works. I mean, it's just that obvious. And that was my first experience about 10 years ago where, I knew some of the theories behind it, but all I knew was that it worked, and that was what got me most excited. Now, the good news is that the most recent research is actually giving us some clues as to exactly why it works. And, the conversation for a long time, this was discovered over 30 years ago by a guy named Dr. Roger Callahan. He was a psychologist, and then it was modified to this process by a guy named Gary Craig, who developed EFT. And along those 30 years, the discussion was about energy meridians in the body and balancing the energy system and all kinds of things that are likely accurate, and eventually we'll have the data to show that's the case. But for the time being, from a Western perspective, from a scientific proof perspective, we don't have that data. We don't have the data that shows we're balancing the energy system.
Right, we don't have even data that shows that the energy system exists, unfortunately, in science right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's some stuff on the edge of science that is showing definitely more information there, more things happening that we've seen in the past. But no, it's not as concrete as we'd like it to be. But what we do have is we have a lot of research on the brain and the body and the chemical body and the electrical body. And what the latest research is showing is that when we tap on these endpoints of meridians, we're actually sending a calming signal to the amygdala in the brain. And some people might know that the amygdala is that very ancient part of our brain that is the fight or flight response center. That's the part of the brain that when we see, 10,000 years ago when we saw a tiger in the bushes, we would either run away from it or we would fight it. And it's the ancient survival part, which still serves us today, certainly. If there's a danger situation, that amygdala fires off and we realize that we are in harm's way and we fight or flee to protect ourselves and protect our physical bodies. So when that amygdala fires, our cortisol levels raise in the body, our blood sugar raises, and all the energy is mobilized to the limbs, to the arms, to the legs to run or fight or flee. And we've all had this experience, whether it be a high-grade response of actual trauma in an accident or a dangerous situation, or the low-level response that too many of us feel on a daily basis, which is just the daily stress, where what's going on in daily life just doesn't feel safe. it activates our body, it activates that stress response. So most of us know that experience.
Yeah.
To be human, we know that experience.
Yeah.
Now, what the tapping does is that when we're focused on whatever that target is that's giving us that stress response, and we tap on these endpoints of meridians, we actually send a calming signal to the amygdala. We tell the amygdala that it's safe, and the amygdala actually turns off. And the brain, the body, the limbic system is actually retrained, rewired to have a different response to that previous stimulus.
It's so interesting. What I love about tapping is that everyone tends to have a story about when they first discovered it and the results that they've seen. I know Wayne Dyer and Louise Hay are talking a lot about how much tapping has helped them. I think it'd be interesting to hear more about your story and how you first discovered it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was about 10 years ago now. I think it was 2004 was right around when I first had my experience with it. And like most things these days, I was browsing online, and I've always been into personal development and self-help and buying Hay House books like the rest of the people listening here, and just looking for ways to improve my life and the lives of the people around me. And I kept hearing about this weird EFT tapping thing, and reading story after story of people getting incredible results with it. I mean, it was borderline too good to be true, right? So someone has back pain for 20 years and they tap for 5 minutes and it goes away. And somebody has a quote-unquote disease or dis-ease and they use the tapping process and they heal. And other people are stuck with weight and they having trouble losing it, and they do the tapping and they're dropping the pounds. I mean, just crazy stuff all over the place. And I kept reading about it, and I just kind of ignored it. And it was like, okay, this is interesting, but I don't really know if I'm going to do this myself. What am I going to do? I'm going to tap on my face and body. It just doesn't make sense. But I read about it enough, and one day I'd woken up with a crick in my neck. And, it's not a big deal. It's like you sleep wrong, and for a day or 2 days, you've got this crick in your neck, and you're having trouble moving your neck around. You look like a robot all day, and it's just painful and annoying. And I said to myself, well, I keep hearing that this tapping thing works for pain in the body. So I'm in pain. I might as well give it a shot. So I looked online and I did the tapping and I figured out the process. And it only takes a few minutes to learn and memorize the points. And sure enough, within 5, 10, 15 minutes, I forget how long it was, but, a couple rounds of tapping, the neck pain went away. So that was one of my first experiences that said, whoa, there is something going on here. And I spent the next couple years, and as you know, Jess, I usually tell a story without collaboration, but you can collaborate this. The running joke was that don't say that there's anything wrong around Nick because he'll make you tap on it. And it was like, okay, oh, that hurts? Let's tap on it. You're upset about that? Let's tap on it. And it was just, I was so excited, enthusiastic, and I kept seeing incredible results. And so that's how I was introduced to it. That's how you were introduced to it. And the rest is history.
Yes, absolutely. And it's been such a great adventure. And I know that you, not only did we make a film together on this, but I've seen personally how you've used it in so many different areas of your life. You mentioned some of the different ways people are using it. You mentioned pain. But can you list again, what are some of the different challenges that we can address with tapping?
Well, it's virtually everything, and I know that seems silly to some people. They say, well, how does it work on everything? And I will list some of the things, but let me explain the concept of why it can work on such a varied number of things. And that's because if we go back to that concept of the amygdala and the stress response in the brain, when we break down most of our life problems and challenges and issues, they break down to that fight or flight response. It's really fight, flight, or freeze, and it's really the freeze response that's all too often the more difficult one, where we face a traumatic situation and we don't fight or flee, we just get frozen in our bodies like a deer in headlights, and we never release that trauma, actually process it through our bodies. So it's that fight or flight or freeze response that affects huge aspects of our lives. And let me give you some examples. Finances and money and attracting more money in your life and being more financially successful. Tapping can be used incredibly well there. Now people go, why on earth am I tapping on my face and body and saying things out loud? How is that going to bring more money into my life? And the reality is that if we break down our money challenges, what do they look like? They look like patterns of anxiety and stress, right? So when a bill comes in the mail and you know what it's going to be and your heart starts racing and you open it up and you're stressed out about it, you are in that fight or flight response. the blood flows away from the brain into the limbs, and you're looking at this bill and going, this is the end of the world. This is catastrophic. I can't get out of this debt. I can't move forward. And you're running those same limiting beliefs again and again, and you are stuck. Now, what's the opposite of that? The opposite of that is to do the tapping to relieve that anxiety and be in a relaxed state. Now, where that comes in really beautifully is that, yes, the bill is still there. You're still staring at a bill, so that hasn't changed. But if you can change your state, if you can change your response, then you have the ability to change your life, which means you can look at the bill and go, okay, it is what it is. I am where I am. And now I have the mental, emotional, physical, spiritual resources to find a way out of this situation. You know, a great example of this contrast is if we think of, you know, if you ask someone, well, when do you come up with the best ideas? When are you most creative? When do you come up with the best solutions for problems? They usually say, in the bathtub, or when I'm taking a shower, in the morning, at night. I'm taking a shower in the morning, and I'm so relaxed, and I come up with great ideas. Or when I'm walking in nature. So the common theme between all of that, between that creativity, that flow, that ability to overcome problems and challenges, is that relaxed state. It's the amygdala being turned off. And there's certainly physical reasons for this, that you literally have more blood in your brain to come up with better ideas. But there's also emotional and spiritual reasons for that. That when we allow, that when we're in that relaxed state, we have the resources to come up with better ideas, to come up with better solutions. You know, I certainly saw it in my life, and certainly in the making of the Tapping Solution film, and even in the writing of the Tapping Solution book. I did a lot of tapping as I wrote the book. At the times when I felt stuck, you know, I would tap on procrastination, staring at a book, and, you know, writing a book can be daunting if you think, well, I got to write, you know, 75,000 words. It can be overwhelming. And that sense of overwhelm leads to procrastination, again, leads to that amygdala firing off when you just say, I don't want to do this. This isn't safe. I can't do this. All these beliefs that come up. So doing the tapping in that moment, in that process, can help calm the body, get the blood flow going back to the brain, calm the amygdala, and now you're creative, inspired, and your best self once again.
Yes, I love that. I mean, who doesn't ever find themselves procrastinating? So I love that there's something that we could do. We can get clear on what's really stopping us and tap. So without any further ado, I want to teach everyone exactly how they can begin doing the tapping. So can you walk us through the process?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. And, you know, I think the best place to start with tapping, to have a really great experience, is to have a body experience. And what I mean by that is, if you're in physical pain, you know, I've mentioned physical pain a couple times, then make that your target. We always want to identify in tapping what our target is. What's the thing that we're focusing on? And we want to be as specific as possible, right? So if you have pain in your back, you might say, well, it's the back pain. It's obvious. If you have some stiffness in your neck or your shoulders, that can be your target. If you don't have pain, look for tension. Look for places in your body where you feel you're holding some stress. Maybe roll your neck around and try to identify some stress or tension there. And if you can't identify any stress or tension in your body, go ahead and take a deep breath and just see if there's any constriction in your breath. You're going to be surprised at how much the breath can open up. So again, we're working with the body here, and even when we work with limiting beliefs around finances, even when we work with weight loss and cravings, even when we work on relationship challenges, we always use the body as a guide. The body is a great way to really gauge what's going on, what kind of progress we're having. And to me, working with the body, this somatic, this body-centered process is the next step in change. It's really what's been ignored by talk therapy that, certainly has its benefits, but has stayed very much in the head. So the more we can integrate mind-body in all of our life challenges and issues and create that awareness, the more successful we're going to be. So identify for yourself what it is that you want to work on. What's your target? And once you have that target, give it a number on a 0 to 10 scale. So if you have pain in your back and it really hurts, it might be an 8. If you have some tension in your neck, you might say, it's about a 5 or a 6. And just take a guess. You don't have to be perfect with this. This is just a measure so we can see the shift from round to round. And now that you have your target and you have the number of the level, we're going to do some tapping on it.
Well, and actually, Nick, too, before we go into the process, could you talk us through exactly where the tapping points are? I know this is in audio, so it can be a little bit hard without giving people a visual, but could you describe where to tap and if it matters what side of the body they're tapping on?
Yeah, I'll do that right as we do the tapping.
Okay, fantastic.
Step. All right. So we have the target, we have the number, and now the language that I'm going to use here is going to be very general language because I don't know what it is that you specifically out there is tapping on. And that's okay. Just repeat after me the same language. As long as you're focusing on your issue and having your own sensations, that's okay. When you do tapping on your own, certainly using your own language, being as specific as possible, identifying all the different aspects of what's going on is a great way to go. But for now, for that first experience, we're just going to tap together generally. All right, Jess, so you'll be my echo?
Yes, please. So, and I encourage everybody that's listening to also repeat after you.
Wonderful. And just repeat. When I say something, you just repeat along with Jessica. So we're going to start by tapping on the side of the hand. It's called the karate chop point, and you can use one hand to tap on the other hand, and it doesn't matter which hand you use. So it's below the pinky, outside of the hand. Just take 4 fingers of one hand and tap on the meaty part of the outside of the hand. And just tap continuously, and we're going to say what's called the setup statement 3 times. And the setup statement here is, even though I have this stress in my body,
even though I have this stress in my body,
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I'm going to do that 2 more times. Even though I have all the stress in my body,
even though I have all of this stress in my body,
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
And last time, tapping continuously. Even though I have all the stress in my body,
even though I have all of this stress in my body,
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Now we're going to tap through the points. The first point is the eyebrow point. It's on the inside of the eyebrow, right where the hair ends and it meets the nose. You want to tap with 2 fingers, and you can do one side with 2 fingers, you can do the other side, or you can do both sides. The meridians run down both sides of the body, so whatever's comfortable for you. So just tap with 2 fingers 5 to 7 times. You don't have to count it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just tap gently and repeat, the stress in my body.
This stress in my body.
Now moving on to the next point, the side of the eye. Again, one side or the other side or both sides. It's not at the temple. It's right next to the eye on the bone, right where the face sort of turns. And again, this stress in my body.
This stress in my body.
Now under the eye, right on the bone there, one side or both sides, all the stress in my body.
All this stress in my body.
Under the nose, all this tension in my body.
All this tension in my body.
Under the mouth. We call it the chin point, but it's actually above the chin and below the lip, right in that little crease in there, again with 2 fingers, all the stress in my body.
All the stress in my body.
We have 3 more points left. The collarbone point, if you feel for the 2 little bones of the collarbone, and you want to just go down an inch and out to each side about an inch. And I like to tap with all 10 fingers, all the stress in my body.
All the stress in my body.
Now, underneath the armpit, either side of the body, it'll be about 3 inches underneath the armpit, right on the bra line for women, all the stress in my body.
All the stress in my body.
And the last point, this is when we actually look like monkeys, but it's okay, it's for a good reason. Right at the top of the head with 5 fingers, all the stress in my body.
All the stress in my body.
And let's do one more round now that you know the points a little better. So back to the eyebrow. This stress and tension in my body.
This stress and tension in my body.
Side of the eye. It's safe to let it go.
It's safe to let it go.
Under the eye. I wonder what it's all about.
I wonder what it's all about.
Under the nose. And I wonder if I can let it go.
And I wonder if I can let it go.
Under the mouth. Releasing the stress and tension.
Releasing the stress and tension.
Collarbone. I acknowledge the stress in my body.
I acknowledge the stress in my body.
Under the arm. And I let it go now.
And I let it go now.
Top of the head. It's safe to let all this go now.
It's safe to let all of this go now.
And take a deep breath. And let it go. So after each round of tapping, we always do 2 things. The first thing is that we check in on that number. So if you had back pain and it was an 8, now you ask yourself, where is it? And you might say, it's a 6 or a 5 or even just a 7. We're looking for a shift. We're looking to see how did it change. You know, we did about 2 minutes of tapping there, just 2 quick rounds. And if you had pain that it was an 8 and now it's a 6, that is huge. Or even if it's a 7, it's huge because it means it's moving in the right direction and you can continue tapping on it, doing more rounds and clearing it. And the second thing that we do is we ask ourselves what else came up during that tapping. Now, you might not have had a lot come up this time because you were learning the points and it was other things going on, other mental processes. But when you know the tapping points and you go deeper into it, you'll find that as you tap, you'll get other ideas, memories, impressions, thoughts, feelings that can be a clue as to where to go next. So you might start with pain in your back, and that's what you're focused on, and then you feel some emotion. You feel some anger towards somebody, and you might say to yourself, whoa, maybe this anger that I'm feeling towards this person is somehow related to the back pain, and you can follow that path.
Right. Well, I'd love to give the audience some more clarity on what they should say. You mentioned in the beginning the setup statement. Can you tell us why we're saying the setup statement?
Yeah, so the setup statement is serving a couple of purposes. The first purpose, and the setup statement is always follows one of two variations, and it's even though, and then you fill in the blank with the problem, right? So even though I have this back pain, even though I'm angry at this person, even though I'm procrastinating, even though I don't believe I can do this, whatever the target is, whatever you're focused on, even though, list the problem, I deeply and completely accept myself. And we say that 3 times. Even though, list the problem, I deeply and completely accept myself. And I think what the setup statement's doing, it's serving a couple of really important purposes. First of all, it's getting you focused. It's saying, this is what the target is, and here's what we're going to focus on. It's also, that language I think is powerful in and of itself, that we are acknowledging ourselves with the problem. We're acknowledging the problem and we're accepting ourselves with it. And Jessica, both you and I have seen just tremendous shifts just from that statement.
Yeah.
Just from people doing the tapping and saying, even though I have this problem, I'm angry at myself, at other people, I feel guilty, whatever it is that we're feeling or experiencing, I deeply and completely accept myself. That in itself is so powerful. And, I know a lot of one of the questions that I'm sure you would ask me soon, but I'm going to preempt you that people ask is, why are we saying the negative?
Right.
Why are we focusing on these negative issues? Especially during the Hay House World Summit, we're all about positive affirmations. And certainly we are all about positive affirmations and positive thinking. But the challenge is we can't force ourselves to think positive and ignore the quote-unquote negative, which is really the truth. We're just acknowledging how we're feeling. And I think that can be such a relief for somebody to say, you know what, I'm going to acknowledge that I'm angry right now. I need to experience this emotion. And then I'm doing this process to accept myself with that anger and then release that anger. Now people think, well, I'm not going to accept myself with the anger because that means I'm going to keep it. But the opposite is just the case. When we acknowledge how we feel, we accept ourselves with it, we express how we feel, we actually release it from our bodies. And that's why oftentimes we start with the negative or the truth and then move on to the positive. Then we affirm how we want to feel. We go from a negative 10 in feelings and anger and pain to a positive 10. We can affirm what we want in our lives. But it's important to acknowledge how we feel. When we don't, I really like to see it in terms of the body and sort of visually and viscerally with the body, because I've seen it happen again and again that when someone, say, feels anger, as an example of an emotion, and doesn't acknowledge it, they tend to swallow it, right? They swallow it and push it down. And I'll often ask somebody, where do you feel this in your body, this tension, this anger, this sadness, whatever it is? And they'll say, in my stomach. It's just like a rumbling in my stomach. And then as we do the tapping, they literally share with me that the sensation moves up and out to the point where after a couple rounds, I feel the anger in my throat. And after a couple rounds, well, it's just released. And I almost see it as we are really speaking our truth, speaking how we feel, letting it out, acknowledging how we feel, letting it go, processing it through the body, and then affirming the positive in a way that really sinks in. And I'm sure we've all had the experience of, we try to say a positive affirmation and it just doesn't seem to land, right? There's too much of part of us that says, you're looking in the mirror and you're saying, I love myself, I accept myself, and there's this big part of us that's saying, no, you don't, you're ugly, you're fat, you're this, you're that. right? And those affirmations aren't landing. What we do is when we acknowledge how we feel, we tap through it, we use the body to release it, then we can say that we love and accept ourselves and truly feel it.
What advice would you have for someone who has learned the points, but they're not sure whether they're saying the right thing when they're tapping?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, certainly it's, I think, where people get most stuck. And they tend to get stuck too because they'll learn from a tapping expert or work with a practitioner who has a lot of practice in the language and does this all the time. So, I certainly can come up with great language for you because this is what I do on a daily basis. But the reality is, while the language is important to help us access an emotion and an insight, it's the emotion, the insight, the feeling, the focus on what's going on that really matters. So as long as you're focusing on what you're feeling, and again, this is why the body is so important, because with the body, we can really ask ourselves, what do I feel in my body? We can ask ourselves better questions. And then as long as we focus on that feeling or sensation, the language isn't that important. Just do the tapping, say whatever you can say, get it out, and then it'll work great for you.
I know you said the language isn't that important, but I do have to ask because I feel like it's on people's minds. How do you know when you should go from stating how you feel in that moment to more positive affirmations?
Yeah, great question. And Jess, how do you know all the ones that people get stuck on?
I've done this a few times.
Yeah, well, so what I say is that do the tapping until you get to, on the 0 to 10 scale, and this is just, one way to approach it, where the emotion becomes a 4 or 5 max. And then try to do a positive affirmation and see if it's making you feel better or it's annoying you, right? See, I use the word land, like see if it lands or not. And if it doesn't, if you're like, I choose to release this anger and I'm relaxed and calm and it just doesn't feel right and it's annoying you to even say that, then go back to the negative or the truth. Just express that until you get it down enough. And you'll know. It's an intuitive process. I mean, a big part of getting results with the tapping process is really strengthening that intuition and listening to your body, to yourself, asking yourself the right questions, feeling how you feel, acknowledging how you feel, and then just tapping through that all.
You mentioned briefly that we should be specific. Let's focus first on pain. How can someone be specific with their language?
Well, so there's a couple ways that we can approach it. Let's just use back pain as an example. The most general tapping language would be, even though I have this back pain, I deeply and completely accept myself. So you can tap through that. And if you find, well, it shifted a little bit, but now I'm stuck, or I'm not getting as far as I want to on it, or it's down to a 4, but it just won't budge beyond that. Then we can ask ourselves some better questions about the pain. One of them is to actually get a real deep understanding of what that pain feels like exactly. So we have a tendency to say, oh, this just hurts, this pain. But if you ask ourselves, okay, what kind of pain is it? Is it sharp? Is it jagged? Is it just focused, like red hot burning in one area and not in another? Really try to sense that pain. And then we can also ask ourselves questions like, if there was an emotion in that pain, what would that be? So you just sense in, if there's an emotion in this pain, what would it be? And just see what comes up. So you might just go, sadness. I just feel so much sadness in my back. You can also ask yourself if there was an event in that pain or a memory in that pain, what would that be? People will tune into that and go, I just keep thinking about my childhood when I think about this pain. We had a gentleman by the name of John who was in our documentary film, The Tapping Solution, who had 30 years of chronic back pain, multiple surgeries, meds, the whole shebang, right? Not getting any better. As you know, Jess, he was suffering deeply. And we filmed him before our Tapping Solution event, and you could see that he had trouble sitting down. He was in a tremendous amount of pain. And he had had the accident that caused the pain 30 years earlier in a Vietnam-related accident. But what was interesting was that when we asked him what event, what memory was in the pain, it wasn't that original event that caused it. It was some memories about childhood. It was memories about his father beating him with a belt. It was memories about a really difficult childhood. And it was when we tapped on those memories that the pain released. Now, Do I know exactly how it happened? No. And certainly we're finding out a lot more about this new science that says that the pain in our bodies is related to the pain in our childhood, that the challenges that we have is, just totally interrelated to our rest of our lives. What I do know is that when we ask ourselves these deeper questions, we can get results.
So, just to be clear, when we're tapping on pain, we can either focus on just the symptom in our body, or if we intuitively feel like it's leading to something else, we ask ourselves some questions, we can tap while focusing on an event.
Exactly. Let me give you a couple more questions that I think people might
Yes,
find helpful.
please.
A great question is, who comes to mind when you think of this pain? So, for example, this neck pain might represent that pain in the neck. My mother-in-law, right? Whatever it is. I love my mother-in-law, so I'm not saying that as my statement, right? So, who does this pain represent? You could ask yourself, how do you feel about having this pain? So, sometimes when we've had pain for a long time, it becomes a lot more than the pain itself. It becomes what it's done to our life, how it's affected us. So you might say, I'm angry that I've had it for so long. I've suffered for the last 20 years, and I'm so angry about that. You might ask, how do you feel about yourself with this pain? An example of that statement is you might say, you know what, I feel like I'm not enough because I can't find the solution. There must be something wrong with me because I can't fix this pain. So then you can tap on, even though I feel like I'm not enough because I can't find a solution for this pain, I deeply and completely accept myself. Another great question, who would you be without this pain? Now this is one that's really interesting, not only for pain relief and for body issues, but for everything in our lives. When the challenge that we have goes away, who would we be? Right? So,
because we're so often defined by these challenges, or we define ourselves.
We define ourselves. They become who we are. And there's upsides and downsides of these things going away. Being aware of that, being aware of what's going to happen when I release this can be a great question to ask yourself, and then do tapping on that.
Well, so then that takes us into beliefs, some of the beliefs that may keep us stuck in place. How do you tap on a belief?
Well, it's a great question. It's kind of interesting because physical pain in the body, you can see, okay, tapping on meridians and this, that, and the other, and it's like beliefs are just kind of out there, right? And for people want to say, well, what are you talking about exactly with beliefs? Or more specifically, we call them limiting beliefs oftentimes because they limit who we are in the world, what we can create in the world. And those are the beliefs that we have about ourselves, what we believe to be true about ourselves. Now, it's funny, we call them limiting beliefs, but for most people, they're not limiting beliefs. They're just like, well, this is true, right?
Yeah, they seem like facts.
They seem like fact. They only become limiting beliefs when we actually acknowledge them and address them. Now, the most basic ones, a lot of them have to do with, self-esteem, how we feel about ourselves, how we feel about the world, how we feel about our place in the world. So, the simple ones are, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I can't do this, other people can do this and I can't. And then we can have specific beliefs around things like money. So, the obvious one that we've heard so many times is money doesn't grow on trees, and other beliefs that we might have picked up from our parents and childhood and experiences that said, oh, this is the way the world is, and this is what we decided, and then we're acting accordingly. The reason beliefs are so important to look at and address is that from those limiting beliefs, the rest of our life follows, right? They're really the core, they're the root. If we're looking at a tree, they're the roots, and then the tree grows from that. So if you're walking around with a limiting belief that says, I'm not smart enough, or I'm not good enough, or I just don't have this skill set, or I can't lose weight, whatever that belief is, it's dictating the rest of your life. So in the tapping process, what we do is we take a look at the problem, right? So we take a look at the issue that we have, and then we work backwards to do it, to identify what's the belief underneath that. Where did I learn that, and how can I do tapping to clear it?
So could you give us an example?
Yeah, absolutely. So, a simple one, which a lot of people have experience with, is standing out in the world, right? And speaking in public and speaking your voice and being yourself. And you might say about that, well, I'm not a good public speaker. That could be a very simple belief that you believe about yourself. Or I'm not good enough, or people don't want to hear what I have to say. Now, when we dig back deeper and we ask ourselves, okay, where did this come from? We're looking for the events, the memories, the feelings that created that belief. A simple example on speaking in public, maybe you were 10 years old, you were in 5th grade, whatever it was, and you got up in front of the class to give a presentation and everybody laughed at you because you said a word wrong. And boom, traumatic event, you decided about yourself, I'm not smart enough, I'm not a good speaker, and you decided it certainly isn't safe to speak in public, right? It's not safe to stand out in the world. So that could be the belief that you pull from that. It's not safe to stand out in the world. And one of the ways to work with beliefs, because it can really be out there, is to just say the belief out loud, whatever it is that you're working with, and then check in on it and see how it feels. So let's try that now, because the safety of standing out in the world is kind of a big one. So just say out loud, it's not safe to stand out.
It's not safe to stand out.
And then just feel that in your body and just see what comes up when you say that belief. And ask yourself, how true is that? 10 being it's absolutely true, 0 being there's some people who will say it's not safe to stand out in the world, and they'll say, no, that's a 0. I'm good. I'm doing my thing. I'm rocking it. I'm rolling, and I've cleared that. Other people will say, no, that's absolutely true. It's not safe to stand out in the world. So and just tune in. Yeah.
And I think it's important to note that we all go through different levels of comfort, and that's why tapping is something that you can continuously use as you begin to grow.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. Certainly, people wonder, well, do I tap for a couple months or a year and then I'm good? Then I'm fixed and then I'm fine and whatever it is. And no, we're always working on that next challenge, that next level of comfort. In my life personally, I've been working on it's not safe to stand out in the world and cleared out a lot of it. And then there's the next level, right? As the message grows and tapping grows, I'm constantly faced with that challenge. Okay. It felt safe at this level, but does it feel safe at this level? I don't know. Let me check in on it and let me do some tapping on it. Right. So why don't we do some general tapping on it's not safe to stand out in the world?
Yes, please.
And pay attention again. What are the, we're using general language here, but pay attention for yourself. What are your memories? If you have something come up, a memory of 5th grade, like I gave as an example, write that down and then go and tap on that by yourself later. The more you can get specific on these events, memories, feelings, ideas, the better your results are going to be.
Great.
All right, so let's do some tapping. So tapping on the side of the hand, back to the karate chop point. And so just before that, so we said it's not safe to stand out in the world. I want you to also feel that in your body. So where do you, if that's true for you, where do you feel it in your body? And what does it feel like? Do you feel tension, anxiety, stress, anger? Just tune into an emotion. Really feel it's not safe to stand out in the world. And give that a number 2 on that 0 to 10 scale. And let's go to the karate chop point. Even though it's not safe to stand out in the world.
Even though it's not safe to stand out in the world.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Even though it's not safe to stand out in the world.
Even though it's not safe to stand out in the world.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Even though it really doesn't feel safe to stand out in the world.
Even though it really doesn't feel safe to stand out in the world.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
And now tapping through the points. Eyebrow point. It's not safe to stand out in the world.
It's not safe to stand out in the world.
Side of the eye. It just doesn't feel safe.
It just doesn't feel safe.
Under the eye. I don't want to stand out in the world.
I don't want to stand out in the world.
Under the nose. I refuse to stand out.
I refuse to stand out.
Under the mouth, because it just doesn't feel safe.
Because it just doesn't feel safe.
Collarbone. I don't want to be judged.
I don't want to be judged.
Under the arm. I don't want to be criticized.
I don't want to be criticized.
Top of the head. I don't want people to notice me.
I don't want people to notice me.
Back to the eyebrow. I'd rather stay hidden.
I'd rather stay hidden.
Side of the eye. It's just not safe.
It's just not safe.
Under the eye. To stand out in the world.
To stand out in the world.
Under the nose. It's never been safe.
It's never been safe.
Under the mouth. I wonder where this started.
I wonder where this started.
Collarbone. I wonder where I learned.
I wonder where I learned.
Under the arm. That I can't stand out.
That I can't stand out.
Top of the head. I wonder where I learned.
I wonder where I learned.
Eyebrow. That it's just not safe.
That it's just not safe.
Side of the eye. I wonder what it would take.
I wonder what it would take.
Under the eye, to feel safe.
To feel safe.
Under the nose, I wonder if it's safe.
I wonder if it's safe.
Under the mouth, to stand out in the world.
To stand out in the world.
Collarbone, I wonder if it's safe.
I wonder if it's safe.
Under the arm, to stand out in the world.
To stand out in the world.
Top of the head, I choose to feel safe.
I choose to feel safe.
Eyebrow, I choose to stand out.
I choose to stand out.
Side of the eye, and feel safe.
And feel safe.
Under the eye, I feel safe in my body.
I feel safe in my body.
Under the nose, I feel safe in my life.
I feel safe in my life.
Under the mouth, it's safe to stand out in the world.
It's safe to stand out in the world.
Collarbone, it's safe to be safe.
It's safe to be safe.
Under the arm, it's safe to be relaxed.
It's safe to be relaxed.
Top of the head, it's safe to be me.
It's safe to be me.
Take a deep breath. And let it go. So we tune back in. What else came up there? How was that? Say that statement again. It's not safe to stand out in the world.
It's not safe to stand out in the world.
And we see how that changed. How did that shift? And again, most importantly, what came up when we were doing that? You know, it's great to start with these, what we call global statements, these very general statements, because they can help us get clear on what the specific issue, what the aspects are behind this. What are the memories? When did this start? Who did you learn this from? You know, how did these patterns start creating themselves in your life? And when we identify those originating events, those traumas, those things that happen to us in our life that we're holding on to, and we let them go, that's when real change happens.
And you mentioned that sometimes as we do these tappings, we may think of memories in the past. What if somebody's tapping and just now what they thought was, well, if I stand out, my father, who always makes a comment every time I try something new, is going to say something.
Yeah.
And, you know, I can't stand, you know, even giving him the possibility to criticize me. So what would you do, just to give people other examples, what would you do if that information came up as you tapped?
Yeah, great question. So there's a couple approaches. One, you can just do the language, even though my father's going to criticize me when I stand out in the world, and tap through that. You can also just go through the tapping process, visualizing the last time that he criticized you, right? So just, you run it in your mind, you run the memory, you feel it in your body, you probably feel some tension, some anxiety, and just do the tapping through it. We call this the movie technique. So we're running a movie, and we do the tapping until we can see that memory and that charge is gone. And then you can also imagine it happening in the future, right? So if you want to do something, let's say you want to write a book, and you know that if you publish the book, your dad's going to say something about it. He's going to make some sort of comment. Oh, are you publishing a woo-woo book? All the stuff that you're into. So picture that happening and do the tapping to release that charge, release that part of you that just shrinks down and says, oh, it's not safe because this is going to happen. When we run these memories and we do the tapping on it, again, we retrain the brain and the body to act and react differently. So now you let go of that charge, and it opens the door to actually write that book.
Right. I love it. And it really does work so well. I hope everybody really is taking this in and begins to do the tapping on their own. We've covered beliefs. Another topic that you're very well known for, and it's in the category of belief, but it's finances. I know that you do a 7-week program to help people with that. How does tapping help us when it comes to the financial side of our lives?
Well, there's a couple of different ways to approach it. You know, certainly what we just covered, the beliefs, is a big part of it, right? Standing out in the world and who we are in the world, and can we follow our passions and dreams? We've got to clean up that old stuff in order for things to align for ourselves. It's just the reality of it. We've got to go back, and it's easy work in that the tapping makes it easy to clear, but it's hard work in that we have to have the courage to go and look at these things in our lives and really be very honest with ourselves and say, what are the things that have happened to me that I truly haven't let go and processed? If we don't do that work, if you find that you're doing the same thing all the time when it comes to money, running the same patterns, not able to follow your passion, or you're doing what you love but you're not making any money, maybe there's a belief in there that says, well, I love what I do, I'm helping people, I'm a yoga teacher or a massage therapist, or I'm an EFT practitioner, I love what I do, but I'm not making any money because I'm scared to charge people. All right. Then you got to look and say, do I have a belief that says it's not spiritual to make money? It's not right to charge people when you're helping them. We got to address those beliefs. The other thing, I mean, there's so many angles to take on the finances. The other angle that I think is really important is what I talked about earlier when I was talking about the bills that come in. And it's just that generalized anxiety, what I call the noise around finances. You've got to bring down the volume of that. It's almost as if that's just music that's blaring and not even good music, heavy metal music, or just static and noise that is drowning out our positive ideas and inspirations. So bringing down the anxiety about your current financial situation can open the door to changing it completely.
Well, can we do some tapping around that for those who are feeling anxious right now about their financial situation?
Yeah, let's do it. So again, tune back in. We always want to identify the target, and we're going global here first. But then you can go specific from there. So just test a couple things. Maybe say out loud, I'm anxious about my finances.
I'm anxious about my finances.
And just see how that feels. Or just think of your money situation, and if, there's a couple things. Either you're struggling financially, or you're doing well financially, but maybe there's something about your job that you don't like. You're not following your passion. Just look into that whole sphere of finances and work, and just see how you feel when you think about it. And again, as always, tune into your body. When you think about work, when you think about finances, when you think about money, what do you feel in your body? And let's do some tapping. Oh, sorry, as always, try to give it a number on a 0 to 10 scale with that tension, that anxiety, whatever it is you're feeling. And let's do some tapping. So tapping on the side of the hand. Even though I have all this anxiety about finances.
Even though I have all of this anxiety about finances.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Even though I have all this anxiety about finances.
Even though I have all of this anxiety about finances.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Even though I have so much stress and anxiety about finances.
Even though I have so much stress and anxiety about finances.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Now tapping through the points. Eyebrow. All the stress and anxiety.
All of the stress and anxiety.
Side of the eye. Feeling so much stress about finances.
Feeling so much stress about finances.
Under the eye. The stress about money.
This stress about money.
Under the nose. The stress about my job.
This stress about my job.
Under the mouth. All the stress in my body.
All this stress in my body.
Collarbone. I've been running these patterns for so long.
I've been running these patterns for so long.
Under the arm. And I wonder if I can change them.
And I wonder if I can change them.
Top of the head. I just can't change them.
I just can't change them.
Eyebrow. Yes, I can.
Yes, I can.
Side of the eye. No, I can't.
No, I can't.
Under the eye. All this confusion about money.
All of this confusion about money.
Under the nose. All this stress.
All of this stress.
Under the mouth. It's time to let it go.
It's time to let it go.
Collarbone. It's time to change.
It's time to change.
Under the arm. It's time to identify these old patterns.
It's time to identify these old patterns.
Top of the head. These old beliefs.
These old beliefs.
Eyebrow. These old traumas.
These old traumas.
Side of the eye. And let them go.
And let them go.
Under the eye. I choose to let them go.
I choose to let them go.
Under the nose. It's safe to let them go.
It's safe to let them go.
Under the mouth. I feel so free.
I feel so free.
Collarbone. When I let them go.
When I let them go.
Under the arm. Feeling calm and relaxed.
Feeling calm and relaxed.
Top of the head. Feeling safe, calm, and relaxed.
Feeling safe, calm, and relaxed.
Take a deep breath. And let it go.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Nick.
You're welcome.
Nick, when someone decides that they are ready to use tapping to help reach the next level of their life, whether it's within their financial or just stepping up in the world, how often do you feel like they should be tapping? And for how long?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it changes for everybody, and it certainly changes with regards to what you're working on. My personal experience is that when I first found tapping, I did a lot of it. I basically said, I'm just going to dive in. I'm going to clean it up. It's time to clean up this stuff. and to experience massive change. So for a lot of people, that's one of the ways to go, especially when you find it and you have a result and it's something that's exciting. Follow that energy and do a lot of tapping and clear up that stuff from the past and change those patterns for good.
And is a lot of tapping doing it a few times for 5 or 10 minutes, or is it sitting down for an hour?
Yeah, well, it's a great question. I think sitting down maybe for half an hour. If you do a session with a practitioner, that can usually run an hour, and that's a good length of time. I find that when you're tapping by yourself, an hour can be a little too long. You just, especially because you clear stuff, and then you're like, all right, I cleared it, I'm good. So I think 30 minutes is a great goal to set, but if you can't do 30 minutes, then even just doing 5 or 10 minutes of tapping a day, just reducing the cortisol levels in your body, reducing the stress, just calming the body is going to provide you with great benefits.
Right. If someone begins to do the tapping and they're finding that they're not getting the results that they were looking for, do you have any suggestions, any troubleshooting tips?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I've mentioned a lot about being specific. So the more specific you can get on these events, ideas, the more specific you can get with the language that you're using, the better results that you're going to get. If you feel stuck on something, you might want to reach out to an EFT practitioner. And, there are thousands of them around the country, around the world. You can do video Skype with them. You can find one anywhere and just find somebody you resonate with and work with them, and they can help you get unstuck. And certainly if you are working on some deeper issues, some trauma, PTSD, really difficult things that have happened in your life, that's when I recommend that even before you start that by yourself, you reach out to a practitioner that can guide you through the process.
Right. Well, that's great tips. Now, we just have a few more minutes left, and I think it would be fantastic to end with some tapping. So I know there's so many different things that we can tap on, but is there a topic that you suggest we end with?
Yeah, so let's just do a general tapping on the next step of change and growth and evolution.
I think especially within this summit, as we're listening to so many different things, that's perfect.
Perfect. So karate chop point, tapping on the side of the hand. Even though part of me has been stuck for a long time.
Even though part of me has been stuck for a long time.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Even though there's a lot of things that I want to change.
Even though there's a lot of things that I want to change.
I choose to know that I can change them now.
I choose to know that I can change them now.
Even though there's a lot of things that are changing in my life.
Even though there's a lot of things that are changing in my life.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Tapping on the eyebrow. It's time to change.
It's time to change.
Side of the eye. I've been a little stuck.
I've been a little stuck.
Under the eye. But I know change is possible.
But I know change is possible.
Under the nose. With all these amazing resources.
With all of these amazing resources.
Under the mouth. I can put them in play.
I can put them in play.
Collarbone. In my life.
In my life.
Under the arm. And experience that change.
And experience that change.
Top of the head. I release any feelings of overwhelm.
I release any feelings of overwhelm.
Eyebrow. Even though there's a lot of these interviews.
Even though there's a lot of these interviews.
Side of the eye. And a ton of amazing content.
And a ton of amazing content.
Under the eye. I choose to know.
I choose to know.
Under the nose. That I can take them in one step at a time.
That I can take them in one step at a time.
Under the mouth. I choose to know.
I choose to know.
Collarbone. That all is well.
That all is well.
Under the arm. That my body is healing.
That my body is healing.
Top of the head. That my finances are healing.
That my finances are healing.
Eyebrow. That my relationships are healing.
That my relationships are healing.
Side of the eye. And all is well.
And all is well.
Under the eye. I'm ready for that next step.
I'm ready for that next step.
Under the nose. I'm ready to move forward in my life.
I'm ready to move forward in my life.
Under the mouth. I feel safe and empowered.
I feel safe and empowered.
Collarbone. I feel safe in my body.
I feel safe in my body.
Under the arm. And ready to move forward.
And ready to move forward.
Top of the head. I feel safe in my body.
I feel safe in my body.
And still on the top of the head and ready to move forward.
and ready to move forward.
Take a deep breath. And let it go. And that's it.
Wow. Well, I feel great, and I think this is going to help. Well, I know this is going to help so many people. So, Nick, I want to thank you so much for making it so easy for us and taking the time to speak with us today.
Jessica, as always, it's been a pleasure.